All right, well, let's get it back on. Welcome back to the Family Banking Podcast. I'm Chuck.
I'm John.
All right, we're glad to be with you.
To it.
So we were moving through the decades. We were talking about family life, and family banking, and family entrepreneurialism, and family business, and skill creation. And so now we're up into the 30s to the 40s. And I said before the break, there's some things that maybe didn't go so well in your 20s to 30s. Well, it's not the end of the world, but I can tell you, I'm reading from this article again from the businessinsider.com, and they're quoting, the high interest rates have raised borrowing costs. The bottom 50% of Americans had around $6.1 trillion in debts. Meantime, the upper, echelon of people had much less debt per capita. So unfortunately, men today and families today probably, if they haven't managed well, are facing a debt crisis. They're facing credit card debt, home student loans, right?
Yeah. Partly caused by the fact that everybody said you needed to go to college to make a good living. And go into debt for it. So that's probably a reason why that generation
We could do a whole show on that. A whole show on that. Yeah, going into debt for college.
Right.
Oh, my goodness. The countless people that call me that have student loans, anywhere from $20,000 to $200,000. It's amazing.
Right.
Depending on what field they're in. So I would just say this. I would say the hand you've been dealt right now in the economy is a tough one.
Right.
I think it's harder today. That's why I printed off these articles. But if you're depending on the system, my biggest first encouragement, if you're in your 30s to 40s, don't think that a W-2 job and you're going to get that pension at the end. You're not going to get it. And even a 401k is pretty tough to save up enough money. You're going to have to get creative, and you're going to have to correct. If you have to build new skills, I have always done that. I recreated myself in my 40s. I was an engineer by training, and I found out about some things. And at age 46, with 10 children at home, I was able to launch a business and go into consulting for well over 10 years on my own.
Right.
So I know it can be done.
So don't be afraid, if need be, to recreate.
To retrench.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to have to get your wife on board.
Right.
You're going to have your family in order. You're going to have to find some skill development. Maybe you're going to have to apprentice or work cheaper for a while.
Right.
But, there's so much opportunity, I think, in the IT space. Now, I'm not an IT guy, but if I was going to look somewhere, something that might be doable, that you could work on at night, maybe that's it. Maybe if you're more physical, and I know guys that have gotten their, I was just talking to a guy the other day, he got certified in, he went to mechanical engineering school and got his engineering degree after he had been certified as like a water treatment guy or something like that. Wow. And he went back and he's, in his 40s now. He was able to do it in his 30s.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even if you're willing to become sort of specialist as a plumbing, you're able to get your journeyman's license or electrician somewhere around there. You could, if you don't have the time to put in for all the schooling, you can always get a job that by actually working at a place, you can gain your certifications. HVAC certifications and gain some experience that way.
That's right. I looked at that at one time, actually, being an HVAC guy way back when. So I know this show is ultimately going to be about family banking, but if you don't have any money, or you have a lot of debt, or both, then maybe we've got to recreate the genesis part of the cycle where we have to get skills and abilities and get the family organized in a way that we can generate that money that we're going to put into that family bank. So, well, great. Hourly wages, they're quoting here. Another problem is the hourly wage growth has not kept pace with inflation. So if you were making $30 an hour 5 years ago, it's not the same $30 an hour. Until just recently, wages grew 5.2% year over year in October, above the inflation rate, but now it's lower than that. And prices have climbed 9.1% for prices on many things, hitting a 41-year high. So we all know it's costing more. That's what this election, we're in an election year, by the way. Here we are pre-election in 2024.
It's still pretty south.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I hope that something turns around. So I feel like most of the people I'm talking to that are struggling the most are really in that 30 to 40 age group. So my heart goes out to you. I think that if you join our community, you'll find other people who are having ways for you to overcome these challenges. We have people in business. We have people recruiting people. We have people willing to invest in other businesses and all that kind of thing. So it's not a dead-end street. But if you're all alone sitting in your house and you're tied up on video games or you're just, barely making it, I think that you really have to take that hard assessment as a father and a husband in your 30s and 40s and say, man, at least I better get like a side hustle or something.
Right.
I better get busy, because if you don't see, if your 20s and 30s passed you by, those were the times where you should have created that extra capital. That would have been nice. But when you reach 30, 35, pushing 40, and you don't have it, don't give up. Find somebody to come around you, join our community, and learn from somebody else how to do these things. So
talking about the 30s, so let's say a lot of people might say, even in your 30s, just buy term and, make that money like you're talking about, and just keep all your expenses really low, just build that cash up and stock it in a savings account, and and even a separate savings account so you can't touch it as easily in a different bank. What do you say to that guy? What's the theory behind just stock that money aside, buy term, and invest the rest? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
How does someone in their 30s actually apply some actual basic, handling of money?
So when we're talking private family banking, what John's getting at, we use, it's really kind of countercultural, counterintuitive. We use a highly funded and highly profitable, high cash value whole life insurance policy to create this family bank. And you go, what? So that's what he's getting at. The old adage came from A.D. Williams, or A.W. Williams, was, buy term and invest the rest. Dave Ramsey's a big candidate of that too. And Dave Ramsey's helped a lot of people who had no control over their lives and their money. But on this, what we do, and on the whole idea of what he's talking about for retirement, frankly, is a dangerous conversation. You've heard maybe you retirees or people who are approaching that you need this nest egg, and then you can do a drawdown of the money. Well, Dave Ramsey's telling you can do 8%. That's never going to happen, and the cost of inflation is going to eat you up. So you need a different strategy.
Right.
And so what we're talking about, buy term and invest the rest, was take your extra dollars and put them in the stock market. Of course, not a lot of people win over the long run. If you do the math, the stock market has not gained 8 or 10% over the last 20, 25 years. It's really about 5.74% if you run the numbers, because what you're doing is you're doing the ups and the downs. And when you do the math and you take $100,000 or $10,000 and you put it in there, and you watch, this year I'm up 25, next year I'm down 31, and there's been a lot of those big spikes and ups and downs.
Right.
That really affects your basis. So you're not really getting ahead with it.
But if you're in your 30s, how should you think about handling your money? And when you're younger, you're able to maybe be a little bit more volatile with your investments. But as time goes on, you actually really need to be finding stuff that is consistently increasing in value and is protected.
Yeah,
so how do you do that?
And we'll get into the how-tos maybe next episode. But let's just say, if I could show you a way where you would never lose money, that you would always have growth, tax-free, and you could grow it over time, and you could participate your family in it, and you would get a death benefit, and you could use it as a swing account to do market-based investments or real estate. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? That's what we're all about at Family Banking. And so the whole concept, I think in the next episode, we'll start to develop some of the fundamentals of that. But there are methods out there. There are ways to, even for the guy who's only got $200 or $300 a month, if you get started today, that's the main thing.
Right.
And once you get started putting money into your private family bank, you're inspired to find that money. So, rather than eat beans and rice and philosophically do that, your behavior will automatically change, because you see, hey, I can put this extra money in there. I can put this extra money in my own system and have access to it at the same time.
Right.
Duplicating your capital by using what's a form of leverage, or arbitrage is really not the correct term, but a way of borrowing against your own capital at a cost that's less than the growth that money's going to earn is huge. It can be huge in a lifetime. And so many people that get into this, they create the family bank and they multiply it by making it bigger and bigger and joining more of the family members into it. So, but we'll kind of get into that. Let's cruise into the 40s and 50s now. Here, 40s and 50s, mostly what I'm finding is men and families that have taken advantage of the 401k. And so the 401k was the be-all, end-all. It's because no one's really going to believe they're going to get Social Security. So the government recognized right away. They had to incentivize people to put it in. So the guy who created the 401k, he's now saying that's really not a great deal for a couple of reasons. One, you're eventually going to pay taxes on that money.
The man who actually created the system of thinking, he's still around.
Yeah, he's still around, and he's saying, hey, I kind of goofed up.
Really?
Some great articles on that.
Oh, my. Who is this guy?
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but we'll get that as a source. Put that in the show notes, I guess. But the bottom line is, if you're getting a match, if you're getting if you put in 6% and you get 3%, or you put in 6% and you get 6%, that's hard to turn down because you're using somebody else's money. But beyond the match, if you're really not getting a match, I would recommend you really rethink, because the strategy is income tax rates are likely to go up or down. What do you think?
Up.
Absolutely up.
Yeah.
And so the current income tax rates are ending and sunsetting in January of 2026. So even if Trump gets elected, now we're on the precipice of the election, doesn't mean tax rates are going to stay the same.
Yeah.
And eventually all this debt and this craziness in our government, all these trillions of dollars sitting in 401ks, they're a target. They're a target for what? They're a target for taxation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a bunch of money that hasn't been tapped into yet.
That's
Especially for some people. I don't know what the economics are right now, but I don't know how many people are expected to retire in the next 10 years.
Many.
But I'm sure there's a stat on that.
It's the baby boomers. Yep. Yeah. The baby boomer age is retiring now, and they will continue to 35.
Right.
And so, these are the years where the government's probably going to make a shift. So if you have your money in a family banking system, you're not going to face that taxation. Now, there's ways to do that. I'd urge people in their 30s and 40s to think about leveraging that 401k, because many companies allow you to borrow against it. You can borrow against that, put it in a family bank, earn money in the family bank, and then pay back your 401k. And the money you pay back to the 401k, the interest goes to you anyway. In the family bank, it's a little different, but you can duplicate that money. If you can roll that money over, if you leave a company, you can roll it into an IRA, and then you can do a 60-day withdrawal from an IRA, capitalize your family bank, and then pay that money right back within 60 days. Because our money capitalizes in 14 working days inside the family bank.
So you
can get at it right away. Right away. So I would say many people in their 40s and to 50s have probably put a lot of money in the 50s and 60s. But in the 50s and 60s, moving along to that real quick, and we'll kind of wrap this episode up and hit the 60s to the 70s and call it a night. So in the 50s and 60s age bracket, what you're facing is the risk of a market downturn.
Right.
Ask anybody who's lost 40% in their 401k. It's devastating when you're in your 50s and 60s, because what you were planning to do was at age 59 and a half, start withdrawing or whatever. And all of a sudden you just lost 40% of your portfolio.
Right.
Had all your eggs, and they say, well, I was diversified. Well, you were diversified within the 401k. You didn't really have your own capital set aside. Mm-hmm. So what we have to watch for is there a shift point where we ought to think differently and start in those 50s and 60s to prepare for retirement? Because what happens in retirement, it's called the sequence of returns. If the returns are going up and down, and you're drawing out of your retirement fund, maybe starting at age 60, we'll move on to maybe the late 50s, you think you're going to retire. First of all, I think that's a foolish thing to do. You need to keep working probably till you're 70 now.
Right.
Of course, Social Security max out at age 70, so a lot of people get full Social Security. I did that. And my wife's got Social Security. And so that is an important thing to understand, Social Security benefits and when the best thing to do with that. So there's a lot to learn in each age group. As you approach 60, you do not want to experience a market downturn. There's ways around that. That's either capitalize that private family bank, or you could get into annuities. We also sell annuities. Annuity is a fixed income product where you get a guaranteed income depending. It could be fixed indexed annuity where it has some market upside but no downside, and we can talk about that in an episode too. So moving along, if you're in your 70s, I do have some customers in their 70s that bought some banking policies. It's a little harder. I didn't buy my first one till I was 66, so you can tell I'm a little older than that now. And so it's never too late to start. So each of those age groups, but it starts young. It's consistency, it's a plan, right? It's a set of values, it's a concept, and it's learning how money works.
Right.
And that's what we're at. At family banking, we're teaching people to understand really how money works.
Right. And two, even in all these ages of your life, you can always be gaining skills to market yourself,
Absolutely.
Even if you're in your 70s, if you need to make more money, you can always learn coding or website design or something Just because your skills are changed over time.
I shifted to the private family banking to do it full time when I was 66. I started. It took me a couple of years to get my legs under me and to get it built up, but I did it late in life, and I did that shift at age 46 to consult.
So there's never too late to learn a new skill.
Never too late.
Alrighty, guys.
That's going to be a wrap.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us on episode 1. This is Chuck and
John,
and we're from Family Banking Podcast.